Hina, you're a practicing lawyer and you've been practicing in various types of courts. Do you feel vulnerable or in court itself in terms of handling cases? Do you feel quite at ease with a very male situation or where men dominate?
Well, as a lawyer, I haven't felt vulnerable at all because I feel that professionally, I am at a position where I can argue and I have access to all courts just as normal, all male lawyers would also have. That's not the situation. Where one feels a bit of a disadvantage is when you are in court and you are fighting certain attitudes which are coming out of judicial pronouncements. And there you react not only as a lawyer but also as a woman. And that is where the real frustrations of legal practice for a female lawyer lie.
But you do feel that the judicial system, the court system, and the judges in particular, have an attitude that is derogatory to women?
Not towards female lawyers as such, but towards women generally. And therefore, the attitude that will come out and to which you would react in a court of law would not be an attitude directed at you as a woman lawyer, but as an attitude directed towards women who have come as litigants and the issues that are being raised in courts on behalf of women.
But regardless of the case, if a woman is she sort of presumed guilty until she proves herself innocent, is that the type of bias?
In many cases, that kind of bias will come out. And a woman who has reached a situation or who has come into a situation where she is involved in the criminal justice process, for instance, there is a kind of a presumed attitude that there is a presumption that she has either provoked the crime that has been committed against her, or under certain other circumstances that she herself has been acting in a manner which would not entitle her to the presumption of innocence.
Recently, there was a case in Multan where a woman was raped by 26 men and stripped as well. And you were one of the people who went to see the Inspector General of Police and he displayed a certain attitude. Can you just briefly tell us about that?
Well, that attitude, in fact, is the attitude against which we as women's rights
What was the attitude? I mean, what happened in that instance?
Well, actually what had happened was that we had gone to protest against the inaction of the police and to ask the IG of the police, the Inspector General, about the concern that they as the administrators and he himself as the head of the police department felt as far as the growing incidents of crimes against women is concerned. We were not accusing him, we were showing our concern, and his attitude was that 95% of the women who are involved in such cases provoke the violence themselves and are themselves in some way responsible for these kind of acts having been committed.
He said that specifically.
He said that women themselves, 95% of the women themselves are involved in these cases.
A lot of people say this. Do you think that it's valid, that women are asking for it, women are putting themselves in a situation where they get...
I think the answer to that is very obvious. Of course, women are not putting themselves in a situation where they are asking for it. The problem lies very deeply, and there is a very deep reason and a very serious reason why crimes against women are on the rise, especially in Pakistan. It is because even the official attitude that is coming out and the promise of protection and guarantees against violation of the person that is coming out is that women are only entitled to protection for as long as they stay within their homes. Therefore, in a lot of cases where street violence has occurred against women, they have had to first explain and justify their presence outside the home before any action against the perpetrators of that offense can be taken. The other thing is that regardless of this, there have been incidents where even women's person is not protected against violence even within the home. And that is because the general status of women has been so lowered over the years, and the society is reflecting the attitude which has come through certain legislations in this country, that women are somehow not equal in the eyes of the law, and therefore are not entitled to the same status, the same human rights that other people in the society or men in the society are entitled to.
This The police and the judicial system is there to protect women. Do you think that this is happening?
The police certainly is not protecting anybody in this country, leave alone women. It's just that women become more vulnerable because of their biological and physical conditions. And sexual assault against women has become even more common over the past few years than it was ever before. As far as the judiciary is concerned, judiciary and the judicial attitudes and biases are reflected in certain judicial decisions, and this here I would like to say that it's not only the federal Shariat courts or the Islamic courts which are reflecting that kind of a bias against women. It's in other superior courts in this country where certain kind of bias is being reflected in judicial decisions, because a very entrenched image of what a woman should be is there, and the moral and social values are being reflected in these decisions. And where there is a question of the human rights of a woman, for instance, even the fundamental right to liberty of a woman, the question then arises is, will this woman be permitted to exercise her fundamental right to liberty, given the fact that it may not conform to certain social and moral values that this society has somehow accepted as valid for women.
But this society has always been like this. So why are you so worked up about the last 14 years or since 77? And society has always been like this. The violence within the home, violence outside, etc.
The society has been like this. There's no doubt about that. But the point is that social values, where there was a hope that we could bring in legislation and law could somehow become an agent of social change. Now, when laws start reflecting those values which women have been struggling to eradicate from the society, then our struggle becomes more difficult, because we are fighting at two levels then. The work at the social level, granted, is very slow, and social change is very slow, but when you also have to fight at the legal level, where the relief is much easier to come by.
These laws are here to protect women. They've been brought about to protect people and protect women.
Laws themselves never protect anybody.
No, these laws, particularly the Islamic laws, or the laws under Sinsiya al-Haq, are there to protect women. He promised that the minute he came in.
Well, I think that what he promised certainly didn't come out of these laws, because the laws are not only in their content itself, but as far as the practical application of these laws in Pakistan is concerned, they have shown to have been disadvantageous to women. They have exposed women to extremely dangerous situations, legally as well as socially. The zina law, for instance, since its enactment and enforcement, a lot of women have been involved in the criminal justice process. Women who have been raped have had to prove that they have been raped, unless they want to become, they can become an accused in that case.
This is the only country in the world that has has a death penalty for rape. I mean, in that sense, it's perhaps a unique country.
This country only has death penalty in rape if 4 male adult Muslim witnesses can testify to the fact of rape. Now, I think that very provision itself makes the death penalty meaningless. My personal position, of course, on death penalty is that I don't think that the death penalty is necessarily a deterrent to a crime. But the fact that the evidence requirement has been placed there, no person has so far been given the maximum punishment under the Hudud laws for rape.
So no one has received, no man has.
No man has no man has yet been executed, or the punishment, the maximum punishment for rape has never been executed in Pakistan.
Has it been given?
It has been given in cases of zina, which is extramarital sex with consent, but not in cases of rape. Because if you put in the requirements of evidence where 4 adult Muslim witnesses have to testify to the fact of penetration, then I would say that those people who have watched this offense happen and have watched the penetration take place would no more be witnesses, they would be abettors in this crime. So in keeping in view the whole situation and all the provisions of the law, I would say that this is certainly not acted for the protection of women. Even with regard to discrimination against women, I think that the provisions for evidence are discriminatory. On the other hand, the age of criminal liability in this particular law also discriminates against women, because women become liable for a much harsher sentence at a lower age than males of the same age. Because
what is the age? What is this?
Well, the age of criminal liability, there is no minimum age of criminal liability specified in this law, which means that even a child of 5 or 6 can be easily prosecuted under the law. But if a person has been convicted, then the maximum punishment will not be given in the case of an adult. And the definition of adult is, in the case of a woman, it's 60 years, or if she has reached puberty. In the case of a male, it's 18 years, or if he's reached puberty, which of course is prima facie a discrimination against women. And this, another point relevant to this is that the justification that is being given all the time for not allowing women the equal status as witnesses in a court of law in hudud cases is that they don't understand or comprehend the act or the offense that has been committed, and therefore would not be reliable witnesses. On the other hand, a woman becomes criminally liable for her action at a much lower age, which means that she understands the nature of the offense that has been committed. So as an accused, she can understand that the act that she has committed is a criminal offense, and the consequences of that offense are clear to her. But as a witness, she cannot understand it. Now, it's a very ridiculous situation and a ridiculous argument to my mind.
We're now moving to the WAF questions. WAF was, Women's Action Forum was formed in 1981. Why were women like you silent between 77 and 81 when the Hudud Ordinance and the dress code and many of these things were already passed?
You see, let me first say that the movement for women's rights in Pakistan has been going on for some time. It's been a very erratic movement, but the struggle has been there. It has come up on certain issues, then it has been latent. Why there was no militancy in the movement till the coming in of the Hudud ordinances is because there was a general attitude for the enhancement of the status of women. Till 1979, when the Hudud ordinances were enforced, all legislation that took place specifically for women was done with the objective of raising the status of women. And therefore there was no element of resistance as such. Women's rights groups had not developed as women's rights activists and groups so far because of the lack of social action generally in Pakistan. The situation in Pakistan for many years has been that the country has been under martial law for a long period of time. Fundamental rights have been suspended. Civic and political consciousness has been very low, generally and also amongst women, and therefore no movement for rights ever developed. The other thing, of course, was that because of these political situations, the freedom of movement, the freedom of speech and expression have always been curtailed, and therefore the mobility that you need to build up a movement was not there. And that is why the extreme circumstances that came about in 1979 and subsequently were the starting point of the militant women's movement in Pakistan.
One of the major issues taken up by Women's Action Forum was the law of evidence, and in that there was a strategic use of religion, in other words, using religion or one ayat versus another. That was, in fact, the only way that WAF could have moved at that point, or the women's movement could have moved. What is your response to it?
I think that what women did achieve, or what little women did achieve with regard to the law of evidence and the resistance to other laws anti-women and discriminatory towards women but enforced in the name of Islam, was not achieved because of their having propounded a better or more advantageous interpretation of Islamic law, or that the advantages that women have gained out of this movement have not come because of any support that they have gained through religious interpretations.
But at that time, and we're now talking about 83, 84, there was no other way to go. The state was there was no voice, there was nobody speaking on these issues, and within the context of the state, coming down very hard on Islam, there was no other way for the Women's Action Forum to move.
No, there is no question about there being no other way, but it is true that this way was adopted. And what happened was that the Women's Action Forum, a lot of us in the forum did devise this as a strategy that we will try and interpret the same ayats which the fundamentalists are using to deprive women of certain rights, to get women more rights. And I'm sorry to say that was a wrong strategy, and we did not achieve anything through that strategy at all.
But
what we did achieve and what we were successful in doing at that time was raising a lot of controversies. One of the effects of that controversy was that the monopoly of the mullahs over interpretations of Islamic law was challenged. But unfortunately, there was no conclusion to those controversies. The mullahs were bringing in one interpretation, women were putting forth another. And let me also point out that not in all areas were women able to use Islamic ayats in order to gain advantage, because there were certain areas in which women were at a standstill. They couldn't find an interpretation which could be used to give women more advantage in their as far as the law of evidence was concerned. And that's why in the 83-84 period, this whole strategy of using religion was discarded by a lot of us, and I think that was in fact the point at which women made certain points as far as the movement was concerned, and whatever little women did achieve at that time came at that particular moment. Between the period 81 to 83, when we were trying to put forward all these interpretations, we were not succeeding in anything, and for the very obvious reason that within Pakistan there are numerous sects of Islam. Now all these sects, of course, have come into being because of different interpretations of the source, which is the Quran. We have never seen a merger of these sects because there is never a consensus. It is a matter on which everybody's belief is so strong, and when there is a difference within a sect, subsects have emerged.
But if belief is so strong, and then how is it possible to work outside Islam? I mean, it's inconceivable.
It is not inconceivable to work outside Islam as far as your rights are concerned. Islam becomes a very tenuous basis of argument. It is not inconceivable to work outside Islam. As far as women's rights are concerned, this even as a strategy is weak, because when you are fighting for the attainment of certain rights, the fact that you spend your time just justifying those demands takes up your time, and that is what we have decided not to do anymore. We are no more interested in justifying our demands. We are interested in attaining those rights now. And I think that women who have tried to restrict their arguments within the parameters of Islam are forgetting that even even as a strategy, it is weak, and this strategy is based on a presumption that Islam is a basis for rights and is acceptable as a basis for rights for the people of Pakistan. They forget that if that was true, the Islamic religious parties who have been contesting elections in this country would always have been returned in the parliament.
But they are the fundamentalist ones. It's not a liberal type of Islam, but to be one with the people, to merge with the people, it is necessary to talk about Islam. It's necessary to identify with Islam so that they identify with what you're saying.
You see, then again, there is a presumption over here that the common identity of the people of Pakistan is Islam. If, again, my argument is, if that was true, Bangladesh would not have come into existence. The basis of identification in Pakistan is not Islam. The basis of identification is your ethnic identities and your cultural identities. And I think that this whole strategy has been based on a presumption.
That's like running down. Okay.
I'll just sort of get you into the question again. We were talking about this issue of identity. WAF, or a number of people in Women's Action Forum, say that Islam, we need to use Islam, and one of the main reasons is that because one needs to identify with the people, or the people need to identify with the organization, women need to identify.
I think I don't agree with that point of view at all, because I don't think that Islam is the basis of identification between the people in Pakistan. We have our own ethnic identities, and that is the basic reason why Bangladesh came into existence. If Islam was the identity or common identity, that would not have happened. Islam has time and again proved to be a very tenuous bond for people within Pakistan. For instance, I myself would feel more of an affinity with people from East Punjab living across the border than to somebody from Saudi Arabia, because that's where my cultural roots are.
But in terms of, we are urban professional women, and in terms of a public image and that one has, it is also, argued with a lot of backing that our public image then, if we don't use Islam, the women's movement or Women's Action Forum in particular will get marginalized and can be sort of moved out.
I think that attitude has really come out of because of our own weaknesses in being able to project the correct strategy for achieving rights. I think that a strategy which involves a struggle just for justification of rights is meaningless when you have to struggle, in fact, for the attainment of those rights. And if you keep saying that we have to justify our demands on the basis of Islam, then what you are saying, in fact, is that if somebody is able to prove that Islam does not give us those rights, then we are willing to let go of those rights. This position WAF has never taken. WAF is very clear about the rights that they want, the demands that they are making, and they are very clear on the position that we are entitled to those rights.
But they have the state and the media in their hands, and they can easily give that image, which they do, that we're a bunch of women who just are marginal and insignificant and have nothing to do with society. We're westernized and can be chucked out.
I think that image that they are trying to project is denied by their own attitude towards WAF, because WAF, whatever its limitations, has been very successful in bringing women's issues to public view and making women's rights an issue in Pakistan. And the very fact that WAF is recognized as a organization for women's rights gives a lie to any image that somebody is giving that WAF is marginalized because they are working outside the pale of Islam. The point is that it's not a question of working within or without the pale of Islam. There is a very clear direction that WAF must take, and we as members of WAF are taking it, that there are certain rights which we are entitled to as human beings, and our position for the demand of those rights is based on the universal and accepted norms of human rights, of equality and social. And that is the basis on which we are formulating our rights. Because if we go into the argument of whether Islam allows those rights or it does not allow them, then what we are doing is we are raising a lot of controversies but never resolving the controversies. And this is something which we have found because of practical experience of the early years of the movement.
But this stand of yours, or this position, is the reason why WAF has not increased its membership.
I think that's also not really true. WAF may not have increased membership in terms of members coming and attending meetings, but WAF has, over the years, increased the number of people that it has conscientized. And I think that is the major task that WAF had set itself out to do. And this increase in the consciousness about women's rights is the very reason that each and every political party, whether they belong to the progressive groups or the extremely fundamentalist groups, during the 1988 elections had to give a priority to women's rights in their manifestos. And they had to specify those rights by saying we will give women equal rights, the right to equal status as human beings, the right of equality before the law. And I think this was a very major achievement.
Nevertheless, women are not joining WAF because it's not an Islamic, it's an anti-Islamic organization.
Well, I think that women may not be joining WAF as such, but there are other groups that women are joining, and women are becoming more and more active, and those groups have more of a non-Islamic or more of a secular image than WAF has.
So
And
Islam
women
is
have
not,
joined.
Islam
those
is not
groups.
the issue.
Islam is not an issue, and Islam cannot be an issue where in the country 90% of the population is Muslim. And where you are a Muslim majority country, Islam is never in danger. Your practices, your identity.
But this 90-some% want an Islamic republic, and having an Islamic republic means that they want an Islamic state. They want to live their lives according to Islamic codes.
I think that again we are talking about presumptions as far as wanting Islamic codes is concerned. The fact that we are Muslims and the fact that we have a certain allegiance to our religion cannot be controverted. But whether Pakistani Muslims want certain values to be codified, which values are said to be Islamic values, but in fact are values which have been imported from Western Asia. I think that those who are insisting on it and those who have propounded this idea have never tested it in an electoral campaign. Neither in the 88 elections nor in the 1990 elections was this ever an issue on which the people voted. And the effort to take us out from South Asia and place us in Western Asia, it will never sort of be very useful for anyone, because you cannot impose ideologies and ignore the realities of social conditions. Sorry.
So if people of Pakistan, are you saying that they do not want an Islamic state? No, I'm going to ask her specifically the question. It's not to. Do you, given this situation, is it possible, to stand that you take that religion should have no relationship with the state?
I think that if we look at all the struggles that have been waged in this country, they have been based and entrenched in democratic values. And those are the priorities that the people of Pakistan have.
But Islam is democratic.
Islam is projected as being democratic when those who need Islam for a particular time to enforce their own power in the country want to give it that image.
But that is not Islam's reality?
That is not the reality of any religion, because if religion does not allow any opposition, then there is inherent in it a quality of dictatorship, which is in direct conflict to the democratic values. And I think that the people of Pakistan who have always emphasized their need for democracy, and this includes women as well. And here I would refer to the movements for restoration of democracy carried out during the 1984-86 period, where the women's movement somehow merged into these movements for the restoration of democracy. And I think here, at that time, the women's movement, including WAF, made a very significant statement that women's rights are going to receive protection if democratic institutions are strengthened and democratic values become entrenched in the society as a whole as well as in the state.
But should Pakistan be an Islamic republic, or what is your position on this?
I think Pakistanis are, 90% of the Pakistanis are Muslims. They don't need that kind of assertion to gain any advantage in this country. I don't think that any country should have religious ideology as a basis for their existence. People and people's rights should prevail, even where ideological concepts contradict with the rights of people and the human rights of people is concerned.
Is this possible in Islam? Because Islam is one religion that has the state inherent in it. It addresses itself, it has codification within it. You cannot be a Muslim without also having a community, and by community one means the state. Inherently there's a state within Islam. So you can't be a Muslim unless you have an Islamic state.
You can be a Muslim, but you need not necessarily have an Islamic state. There is a difference between a Muslim state and a state for Muslims than an Islamic state. And that is a possibility. I don't think that any of the rights that we enjoy today in the Constitution contradict any of our religious beliefs, because if that was to happen, then of course again the very secular value of your right to religion would be affected and violated. And I would say that even on the basis of human rights, even that is something that one would not wish for.
There's actually nothing in the Shariat bill, so why are you so het up about this bill? There's nothing that is different from the 1973 Constitution.
Well, as far as the Shariat bill is concerned, there is nothing in the Shariat which is very different from the declaration of intent to protect rights.
Religion should have no relationship with the state?
I think that if we look at all the struggles that have been waged in this country, they have been based and entrenched in democratic values. And those are the priorities that the people of Pakistan have.
But Islam is democratic.
Islam is projected as being democratic when those who need Islam for a particular time to enforce their own power in the country want to give it that image.
But that is not Islam's reality?
That is not the reality of any religion, because if religion does not allow any opposition, then there is inherent in it a quality of dictatorship, which is in direct conflict to democratic values. And I think that the people of Pakistan who have always emphasized their need for democracy, and this includes women as well, and here I would refer to the movements for restoration of democracy carried out during the 1984-86 period, where the women's movement somehow merged into these movements for the restoration of democracy. And I think here, at that time, the women's movement, including WAF, made a very significant statement that women's rights are going to receive protection if democratic institutions are strengthened and democratic values become entrenched in the society as a whole as well as in the state.
But should Pakistan be an Islamic republic, or what is your position on this?
I think Pakistanis are, 90% of the Pakistanis are Muslims. They don't need that kind of assertion to gain any advantage in this country. I don't think that any country should have religious ideology as a basis for their existence. People and people's rights should prevail, even where ideological concepts contradict with the rights of people and the human rights of people is concerned.
Is this possible in Islam? Because Islam is one religion that has the state inherent in it. It addresses itself, it has codification within it. You cannot be a Muslim without also having a community, and by community one means the state. Inherently there's a state within Islam. So you can't be a Muslim unless you have an Islamic state.
You can be a Muslim, but you need not necessarily have an Islamic state. There is a difference between a Muslim state and a state for Muslims than an Islamic state, and that is a possibility. I don't think that any of the rights that we enjoy today in the Constitution contradict any of our religious beliefs, because if that was to happen, then of course again the very secular value of your right to religion would be affected and violated. And I would say that even on the basis of human rights, even that is something that one would not wish for.
There's actually nothing in the Shariat bill, so why are you so het up about this bill? There's nothing that is different from the 1973 Constitution.
Well, as far as the Shariat bill is concerned, there is nothing in the Shariat which is very different from the declaration of intent to protect rights which are secular rights. The Shariat bill prescribes the functions of various institutions of the state, which are functions of institutions in other secular countries as well. Those functions are not peculiar to only Islamic, so-called Islamic
So why are you so worked up? What's the problem with the Shariat bill?
What is worrying as far as this bill is concerned is when the source of law is defined as Shariat. Shariat in itself is not definite. It is capable of being interpreted one way or the other. Therefore, there are two dangers which arise. Because the bill itself does not say very concretely what steps they will be taking based on Shariat, or what their conception of rights of individuals in accordance with Shariat is, it makes it difficult for us to attack the bill in concrete terms and pick out various provisions and say this is against human rights, this is against the rights of women or the rights of minorities. That is one danger. The other danger is because Shariat, as I said, is capable of being interpreted in many ways, it is also therefore capable of extending to many fields of life. And therefore, a government which wants to use Shariat to put down opposition or punish dissent can use this bill by saying that Shariat is being extended into this area or into that area and interpreted into any way that they like, because obviously, and let's face it, that when religion becomes the basis of rights, then what religion prescribes as rights will be determined by whatever force is in power at a particular time. And if they have that weapon in their hands, they can use that power to interpret, to gain for themselves a validity which otherwise they would not have.
But education and media, they've already started, so we know, I mean, you should know where it's going, I mean, what the government intends to do.
Well, as far as the attitudes that are being promoted in the society and are being entrenched in the society through this handing over of the media and of education to those who are propounding this on the basis of Islam is concerned, we have seen through the practical examples of what is happening to women in this country that it is having a more negative impact as far as social values are concerned, which give women a certain image in our society.
You can just answer.
Islam is not an issue in Pakistan. Islam is only superficially created into an issue to suppress other very crucial issues like nationalism, ethnic conflicts, and therefore to centralize power. And this is a reflection of the need for other countries like Saudi Arabia, for instance, to justify their repressive systems on the basis of Islam, saying that this is our culture, this is what our religion says. And I think, in fact, this justification is only used not as not so as to get these repressive systems accepted, but only to perpetuate these repressive systems, and therefore to deny the human rights that people are entitled to.